Okay, I'm going to start just a little bit early because I have some additional announcements to make. So I am going to quickly just make sure the sound is working. Hi, Angela. How are you? I'm sharing the desktop right now so I can go ahead and get started, maybe have some time to do the announcements, and not only that, answer some individual questions. So we are starting in week 2. It's probably been a little shocking for most of you because the level of rigor can be surprising. Some people believe that an online program means an easier program, and a 5-week program means not as much work, and that's truly not the case. We have certain guidelines that we have to follow as far as rigor goes, so we are required to maintain a certain level of rigor and late assignment policies and things like that to maintain accreditation. There are many online schools or on-ground universities with online programs who lost their accreditation in the past few years because the programs just did not have the level of rigor that could compare to an on-ground program. So there is a reason why the class is not just a giveaway. So anyway, one thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, we had some incidences this week that I had never experienced before. And so I wanted to just give you some reminders because this is your first graduate class, and there is a chance for some of you that maybe even since you had undergraduate school, you didn't have constant access to email or texting or immediate 24-hour access via social media. So I just want to give you some tidbits here. Before you contact your professor, make sure you have read the announcements. There's a lot of information available in the announcements that will bring you up to date, templates that are provided, tidbits that will help you complete your tasks for the week. Make sure you check your email regularly as well, because there is information that comes via email if I feel like possibly you might not get to your announcement in time. Consider the syllabus and St. Thomas University's resources. So make sure you are familiar with the policies and procedures on the syllabus. I'm sorry about that. I just muted everyone. So if you do need to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. Make sure you know the syllabus. Make sure you consult all the resources provided. The very first announcement had several APA formatting examples. First week we went through the Zoom meeting, and we actually went to the library and demonstrated how to do a search for peer-reviewed journals. So before you contact me, make sure you've utilized those resources. Double check the instructions on the assignment. The instructions are actually pretty detailed if you take time. I remember for my first online graduate course for my first master's degree, I printed everything out that first class because I was so accustomed to having everything in my hands. I do much better now keeping electronic documents and maintaining information online. But if that's what you have to do, then maybe you should do that so that you can highlight and make notes. Again, double check the instructions. Familiarize yourself with the rubric. I do show the rubric every single week in our Zoom meetings because I want you to see the level of rigor that is expected. I personally do not control the rubric. The rubric is published by St. Thomas, just like the syllabus is published by St. Thomas University. So knowing the rubric will help you understand what your score is or what potentially your score could be and how to get the maximum points. Utilize the template or the exemplars that I provide. The reason why I do that is so that you can see what is this supposed to look like when it's finished. You get assistance from other folks in that way, and you are able to take advantage of your opportunities of actually seeing what it's about. Now, one of the things about the templates are exactly formatted the way your document should be formatted. When I first started my graduate program several years ago, I thought I could use double spacing when I wanted to use double spacing, and I could increase the size of the font to make it look better and make it more readable. But for graduate programs, I quickly learned the key is to have everything standard. Every document is formatted the same way so that the content of the document is where it's powerful and it's standard. Just like every journal that you read, every article is formatted the same way. So that's part of standard English and professionalism. Review the feedback on the discussion board. Make sure that if I respond to your post, usually those people who are on time, I try to respond to at least 3 or 4 people individually and possibly reach out to others through that same response. And also, you receive a notification that something has been graded as soon as I post that grade. So if you have that notification set up in Canvas, make sure you go back in and you read the feedback on the draft. I give very, very, very specific feedback, and make sure you read the box, the comment box that's in SpeedGrader. And also there's a rubric, and in every section of the rubric, there's a space where I can also put comments. I don't use that quite as often. I prefer writing on the document, but make sure you've done that before you contact me. I spend a tremendous amount of time making sure I inform you guys and give examples. And most of the questions that come to me over the weekend, late at night, early in the morning, can all be answered from the materials that have been provided. So before you email me or text me or reach out to me, make sure you've reviewed all information. Make sure you follow all the directions. Make sure you're calm. I know that when I was in graduate school, I had 3 kids. I was working full-time. My husband was deployed most of the time because he's a retired Marine. And I was experiencing tremendous amount of stress outside of my graduate program. I was 24 driving hours from my family in Tennessee, and there was an extreme amount of stress. So I understand that the reason why you're doing an online program is because you cannot physically attend graduate school. But before you reach out to me, calm down, because the emotion does not properly portray the message. Address the professor with professionalism and respect. And this goes for me or anyone else who is your professor. Make sure your email says, "Dear Professor" or "Dear Dr. Sands." And then approach the tone of the email with professionalism instead of being accusatory or blaming or defensive. Could you please help me understand? Or I looked at my feedback and I'm a little confused, and I hope that you're able to help me understand. Those types of things, the way you would want to be approached. Consider the time of day and okay, let me see, I've got to mute somebody because I hear some background. Okay. Consider the time of day and a reasonable response time. I am better than most professors at returning emails and giving feedback because I do teach part-time at a community college in the evenings. I do teach full-time, and I work in an administrative position in that same school, in public schools. But I am not awake at 2 o'clock in the morning or midnight usually. I try to shut things down about 11 o'clock at night. So if I don't respond to you at 10:45, responding back to me at 10:48 and 10:55 and 11:02, you're not going to get a response if you have not gotten a response from that first email. So make sure you review and edit your email before sending. You don't want to send a message or post a message on the discussion board that has errors, typographical errors, or that's written in chat language or text language, because you're a professional student and you're earning your master's degree, and some of you are earning a second master's degree through this program. So make sure you communicate yourself as a professional, and wait until you've received a response to reply again. I have some students who have emailed me like within a 20-minute time frame, probably 4 times, and then they've posted on the announcements, hoping that I will get a response from the announcements, and then going to the discussion, the SpeedGrader, and commenting on the very same thing. So I will respond to an email if you need a specific answer. I only get notifications once a day of assignments that are turned in, and once a day of anything that's posted as a response to an announcement. So just so you know, if you want to reach me, email me through stu.edu. So the assignment deadlines are the same today as they were last week when I did the Zoom meeting and explained carefully in the first message, the discussion board initial post St. Thomas's deadline is Wednesday, but I give you until Thursday at 11:59 Eastern time because I know that you want to watch this video and get the feedback that you need and some guidance for your assignments. Your written assignments are due on Saturdays, and your discussion board replies are due Sundays by 11:59, except in the last week. In the last week, your final paper and your discussion board are both due on Saturday. Now, I know that some of you are confused about how the resubmission process works. So I'm going to go back to the other slide. I'm sorry. The resubmission calendar takes place from the moment that I give you your feedback, because it's not fair for me to expect you to resubmit before you've gotten your feedback. 24 hours after I give you feedback, it should be resubmitted. The reason why you have to email me is because I don't know if you're resubmitting. And if I go into the assignment box and I delete your assignment and you choose not to resubmit, then you don't have a grade. So I have to get an email from you and literally go in and manually remove your first submission to make room for the second submission. And the assignment box where the assignment is listed is where you download your paper and it goes through Turnitin and then to SpeedGrader. If you go directly to Turnitin, I will never get the assignment, and that happened this week as well. So, examples of APA citations and references. We had several issues, which is completely normal in week 1, of APA formatting and citations. And I actually gave you screenshots of reference pages from my own writing in the program that I was in before. And so I'm giving you a model of how these references should be done. And I actually give you examples of a research publication, a journal article, a published book, an online journal, a book with an edition, an article from a book with an editor, but a different author wrote the article, and it was all online. So I tried to give you as many resources as possible. Sometimes you may come upon a source, probably not in this class because it's a research proposal, that does not have an author. It's an online source. So I have included, hold on just a minute, I have included a link to how to cite something you found on a website in APA. So if you follow this link when you go back to this PowerPoint and review it, it will give you specific examples of how to do online references that do not have authors. You shouldn't have any in this class necessarily because we're using peer-reviewed journal articles for this class. But in the future, you may need to know how to do that. So I just wanted to provide you with some assistance on that as well. And the PowerPoint that I posted announcements will have all of these links. So this week, we're talking about qualitative versus quantitative research. Basically, qualitative is about behavior from the informant's perspective, the participant. So if I were a student and you wanted to know how I felt about standardized testing, that would be qualitative because you would talk to me, you would observe me, you would interview me, and you would watch my behavior in the classroom. That's what qualitative is about. You don't have a hypothesis with qualitative research. You have a general research question, and as you gather data, it drives where your hypothesis turns, which is usually in the end. With quantitative research, this is where you have an area where you're using statistical analysis. Now, you do analyze qualitative data, but this is particular to mathematical details. If anything is about achievement, you're going to be using quantitative statistics. And it assumes that whatever you're hypothesizing about or whatever you're studying has a measurable outcome. I've also included for you a link to a really easy to understand website that I came across a few years ago, and I always have to reload it into my PowerPoint, but it's from simplypsychology.org, and it's about qualitative versus quantitative, and it's laid out in columns, which makes it much easier for me to read than in paragraph form, and it gives examples. So this is a good resource for you to use as well, and you can cite it in your assignment if you have used it, because I have already evaluated it and shown that their resources are research-based. So then there's another resource from skillsyouneed.com, and we usually don't use resources from from anything that's .com, but because the references in this website are research-based, it's so much easier to understand. You can go here and find out differences in the nuances of qualitative and quantitative research, because every one of these websites says it in just a little bit different way. So I wanted to provide you with those additional resources as well. So you'll have those in your PowerPoint. All right, so reviewing literature. The first thing we did with our annotated bibliography is we had a topic. And in that topic, we located 10 resources that were 5 years old or newer. And in some cases, a few of you all got permission to use resources that were 10 years older or newer. So in that situation, there's just some data hasn't been recently gathered, but certainly something more than 10 years ago would not be relevant, because there's so much that has changed, and chances are that study has been done again. So from that topic and review with your annotated bibliography, you have probably located a problem area or a broad area for study. One area that I've studied is teacher-student relationships. So I go in to examine the literature, and this is talking about the literature preview. So what I do is I use professional journal articles and books. I don't use .com sources. I don't use Education Weekly. I don't use teacher-created resources. I don't use anything that does not come from the empirical study, which is what we talked about last week, the people doing the research and conducting the studies who have written these, because otherwise it's not research-based. And in graduate school, we're looking for research-based information, research proven. So then you're going to identify a research question, a hypothesis, or a purpose. So for me, that would be a question to answer, a phenomenon to explain, or a hypothesis to test. So I could ask one of two questions. How are relationships between teachers and students established? I want to learn how teachers and students go from not knowing each other at all to having a relationship that's so successful that students are willing to take risks and feel comfortable and are happy in the classroom. Or another way to look at it is, do teacher-student relationships impact student achievement? So how does the relationship between the teacher and student impact how well students learn? So the empirical approach is based on observations. Why do we observe? That tells us the need for the study. Whom do we observe? Determines the population and the sample size. How many people, what location, what people are going to be studied in this research. How do we observe? What measures do we use in order to gather information to demonstrate what we have seen? And then when do we observe? You have to determine when your study takes place. You obviously want to be there when the behavior that you're interested in is taking place. But what's valid is, if you're looking at student performance, some students may perform better in the spring than they do in the fall, or in the morning than they do in the afternoon. It all depends on what your research question has become. So how do we decide on the research question? So you have this general area of study. For example, ability grouping and reading instruction might be a general area that I'm interested in. My research question focuses. So we go from the topic to a focus question. How does leveling for reading instruction impact students' reading ability? That's the question I want to answer. Do students do better when they're in mixed ability groups for reading instruction, or do they do better when they're all closely on the same ability level at the time? So that is how you determine a research question. Now, when you do, this is the same screenshot that I do every week of the discussion board initial post. Provide a comparison of qualitative and quantitative research. So some of you are stating what qualitative is and you're stating what quantitative is, but you're not verbalizing the differences. Verbalize the differences with us. And also, this is the big part, along with the measures and data analysis tools for each. So you have to explain, in qualitative studies, we are focusing on the participants' viewpoints. The way we measure that data and analyze that data is we observe, we survey, we interview, And then you would say from those triangulated results, because in qualitative you have to have 3 different methods of collecting data to make it credible, we determine the trends that we see from those different measures. And those trends are what lead us to conclusions. With quantitative research, you might measure with a survey that has a question that's answered A, B, C, or D, whereas with qualitative, it's open-ended. You will look at student performance data and test scores or teacher evaluation scores to determine where the analysis is going. So make sure you reference one of your articles to guide your explanation of why the method worked for them and the reasons for the type of analysis. How has examining and evaluating the study prepared you to design your own? These are not just yes, no, give me a definition of qualitative and quantitative. This is where you have to synthesize information from multiple resources, apply what you know, and create something original. So if you don't get 5 out of 5, go back to this question and determine if those have been answered in the format that the rubric requires. So when you do a reply for another student, it would be good if you asked a question to help lead them to accomplishing one of those tasks if you notice that something's missing. So of course, logically organized, easy to follow, no ambiguities or irrelevancies. That's quality of writing, effective, smooth, and logical transitions, and professional format. That includes APA format and standard English. The response integrates multiple perspectives, and as we said before, you can't just say, hey, I like this idea, I might try it in my classroom, and then talk for several sentences about that. You're going to reference research, or you're going to make a suggestion, or you're going to ask a question to challenge the other student. It's not just about saying, hey, that's awesome, love it, because the purpose of the discussion board is to be engaging and challenging on a professional student level. So I usually score the initial post by Friday and the response postings by Monday. And so you'll see a 1 just to say, hey, I've read it. And if I want to wait and see if I get more from you from the final posting, which I usually do, then I will update both of those 2.5 points by Monday. So when I have just talked to the course writer this week, when you go to the research proposal guide for the research proposal, and this is next week, I'm just giving you a heads up, you will click on the research proposal guide and it will pop up and there will be an entire proposal written there. Just so that you know, you're not writing the entire proposal. I will provide you with an example research statement, research question portion, so that you're only doing that first little teeny tiny part of the research proposal. The proposal is 4 weeks of work put together. So when you see several sections, just know that the wrong link got pasted in by the course writer, and I've been working to correct it so that it makes it less confusing. The only portion that you have to follow of the research proposal guide this week is the preview of the literature. The instructions are very specific. This is section 1 of the entire proposal. So this is 2 to 3 pages, double-spaced, APA style, preview of literature with a minimum of 5. This refereed basically means the same thing as peer-reviewed articles and or books. So you chose 10 for your annotated bibliography. You may end up switching some things around, but it's very likely that your 5 sources will come from the annotated bibliography. So you're going to summarize the article and put it into the form of answering a question that you're going to ask, and you're going to show the gaps in the literature. But however, please notice that it is not Article 1 says, Article 2 says. This preview of this literature is about trends and topics. So you can't just go, okay, first author said. That's basically a book report. So I'm going to show you a typical example. I have 2 examples, one that has feedback on it and one that does not have feedback on it. So this is what the final copy looked like for one of my former students, and she gave me permission to use her paper. I have commented here, check APA format, spacing on the header. You know, I'm a former English, well, actually, I'm still a college English teacher, and I taught high school English as well. So I'm going to catch all of those things. So while we're working on your research ability and your organization and your time management ability, we're also working on your ability to write as a graduate student. So my students are very successful in their future classes, and I know it's a challenge, but I want them to know you had Dr. Sands for applied research. I can tell you had Dr. Sands because I don't have to teach this again. So when you get to the draft, this is a different format of commenting because we've changed software, but she used a word with a contraction, which is casual language. So I just say standard formal English, no contractions. When I see an error, I just comment. Now, I shouldn't be giving you the answers. I should be leading you to a place where you can find the answer on your own. You're a graduate student. This is about directed independent work. So then there's a problem here with punctuation. She improperly punctuated this quote. Should be a comma here, and then the quotation mark should end here because that's the title of the article, states, comma, and then her quotation should have a capital letter here because it's a new thought. So it's a little bit confusing because she has a title, and that's why I encourage you to not put the title of the article in the paragraph. Just reference the authors right here where it says in a 2008 article by H. Cooper. If you put it in your sentence, the H should go back here. Then it flows much better. If it's in the paragraph, it should read as you would say it in conversation. If it's in the citation or in the reference page, it should be formatted in that specific last name, comma, first initial. So at the same time, I've commented in several different areas. So I want to, and I'm about to run out of time, so I want to switch over to the literature preview, and this is a former student's literature review. Now, this is not perfect because this should not be in bold, but the reason why I left it is because when she combines this literature review with several sections of her proposal, this is bold. So I let it go because this is actually a heading in her final proposal. Everything is clean, the margins are there, she's citing, she has a quote here, she has a paraphrase here, and I'm assuming this is a she, I can't even remember. And I think the reason she did a study on physical education, how it helps students learn. So everything is laid out neatly, and you see that she's using different sources. She's spreading them around. She's not putting them all in one location, and she's using topics of information that she found in her research. And that's the biggest thing. Make sure you go by topic, not by author. And then her references are here. This is not in bold, which is good. And then nicely done references. She even got the part that I let go sometimes for you guys. She even got the volume number italicized, and then the number of the issue is in standard font. But she had a really nice hand for detail in her writing. And by the end of this class, you should also be able to do this. And I will go ahead and tell you this was a resubmission. She did not get all of this right on the first try, and I don't expect everybody to do that. Cancel that. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So you know what a typical example looks like, and you know what an excellent example looks like. So when you go to the rubric, it's still a simple formatted rubric. The next assignment was when the rubric gets more detailed and more picky about every content area. And so for APA formatting help, there is a link to St. Thomas's Library Style and Citation Guides. It's been there all along. It's been referenced by Student Services. It's been referenced by me. How to cite sources in APA format, right there on St. Thomas University's library page. And so it's all there for you, and it's really hard in the beginning to get all of these resources from all over the place, your books and the online resources that I provide and the PowerPoint that they provide and all of these links, but you're learning to gather all of this and create a tool set that you will use. So at this time, I only have a few more minutes, but I want to allow you guys an opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question, just unmute yourself, and then I'll see if I can answer it.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, it's Angela. I've been emailing you back and forth.
That's okay. That's okay.
I've been looking for journal articles on my topic, and I'm having a hard time finding a lot of journals.
Okay, what is your topic?
How standardized testing impacts student performance.
There should be a million trillion articles on that. So you might want to do standardized testing and achievement, or you might want to change that to achievement testing and student performance. Take out the how and just use the keywords. But there's a lot of research on how standardized testing impacts student performance. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of research that determines if students do well on standardized tests, is that equal to them actually achieving in the classroom other than just on that test. So if this advice doesn't help you, shoot me an email, and then I will try to go in and switch the words around a little bit and see if I can help you pull some things up. Make sure that you're choosing peer-reviewed sources. And are you going through St. Thomas's library?
Yes, I'm going just the way you showed us last week on the Zoom to the area.
Okay. All right, let me see what I can do. There may be a glitch in St. Thomas's system, but let me play with it a little bit later this evening and I'll get to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, please do email me if you have a question. I think someone sent me. Okay, the portion we need to submit will be posted up later today, or is it there already? What you need to submit for the discussion board is already there. You click on discussions and it takes you, and then you go down. You can either go down to the modules, which will show you everything in week 1, everything in week 2, everything in week 3, or you can click on discussions and it will take you and list all of the discussions, and you click on part 2. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, it took me a while to move it.
That's okay.
Thank you. I'm doing my research on school climate and how it impacts achievement. I don't know if I initially had put like school climate and school culture. I don't know if I should just narrow it to one, right?
Yes, narrow it to one and make sure you define what it is, because there are a lot of definitions that combine climate and culture. And those two are, climate is a reflection of the culture. So you want to make sure you specify and define that. And if you're getting it from the participants' viewpoints, then it's going to be qualitative, interview-based, observation-based, and open-ended survey-based. Parents, students, and administrators, teachers, whatever. You could really gather some great information on that.
Yeah, I feel like most of what I found is qualitative. So
yes, I would say yes, it's qualitative. I would definitely go that route. It would be a fun study to do qualitatively.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to end the meeting. If you have any further questions, I should be on just before 11 Eastern time tonight to double check and make sure you understood. I'm very impressed that we have 6 out of 9 people, well, 6 out of 10 if you count me, participating tonight. I am seeing that you're learning the value of Zoom meetings, and that's a good step. So thanks very much, and don't forget, you can email me and I'll respond. I just won't respond at 2 a.m. Thanks a lot, and take care.